You're watching South Asian Newsline, and here are the top stories we are tracking for you on Thursday, the 3rd of July. India's PM Modi conferred Ghana's highest honor, addresses parliament. Blast in northwest Pakistan kills 4, including assistant commissioner. And activist exposes Chinese atrocities against Uyghurs. And now for all the details. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Ghana's capital Accra on Wednesday, beginning his 8-day five-nation tour across Africa, Latin America and the Caribbean. In a rare gesture, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama welcomed him personally at the airport, where PM Modi also received a ceremonial guard of honor. Later, the two leaders held talks at Jubilee House focusing on trade, investment, energy, defense, fintech and critical minerals. 4 MOUs were signed to strengthen collaboration in culture, health, standardization, and institutional dialogue. A key highlight was the agreement to double bilateral trade within the next 5 years, with Indian companies already having invested nearly $2 billion in approximately 900 projects in Ghana. In a significant moment, President Mahama conferred upon Prime Minister Modi the Officer of the Order of the Star of Ghana, the nation's highest civilian honor, recognizing his distinguished statesmanship and influential global leadership. Before concluding his visit to the West African nation, the Indian Prime Minister also addressed the Ghana's parliament on Thursday. During his address, PM Modi termed Ghana as a land that radiates the spirit of democracy. He said the histories of India and Ghana bear the scar of colonial rule, but the spirit of both countries have always remained free. Echoing the importance of Global South, post-war global order has been changing, and the world is facing new crises, but no progress can be made without giving voice to the Global South. And India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar on Wednesday told reporters that the main objective of Operation Sindoor was conveyed with great clarity during his meeting with the Quad counterparts in Washington, which was to show the world that if there are terrorist attacks, India will stand against the perpetrators, supporters and the enablers of it. Operation Sindoor emerged as a calibrated military response from the Indian side to the rising number of cross-border terrorist attacks targeting unarmed civilians and military personnel by Pakistan-based terror outfits. The Quad foreign ministers meeting proved positive for India as the joint statement issued in Washington unequivocally condemned all acts of terrorism and violent extremism, with special mention to the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir. The meeting also saw the launch of a critical minerals initiative focused particularly on mineral recovery and the announcement of Quad Ports of the Future Partnership, which will be launched in Mumbai later this year. The Quad also announced key initiatives in order to strengthen maritime and transnational security across the Indo-Pacific.
Is that the perpetrators of terrorism must be held accountable, they must be brought to justice. And that's important because we then have to communicate to the world that what we did during, on 7th May, the objective of Operation Sindoor is that if there are attacks, if there are terrorist attacks, we will act against the perpetrators, the supporters, the financiers, the enablers. So that message, I think, was conveyed with great clarity.
Moving on. At least 4 people, including an assistant commissioner, were killed and 11 others were injured in a blast on Wednesday in Bajaur tribal district in northwest Pakistan near the Afghanistan border. Police confirmed the target was the vehicle of Assistant Commissioner Faisal Ismail, who was among those killed in the explosion. Among the other deceased were Revenue Officer Abdul Wakil Khan and Police Constable Zahid Khan. As per initial information, a suicide bomber rammed an explosive-laden motorcycle into the vehicle of the Assistant Commissioner and killed him and 3 other people in the double-cabin pickup truck, a police officer told Reuters. No group immediately claimed responsibility. The tribal district has long been a hotspot for Islamist militant activity, with groups operating across both sides of the border. Pakistan has repeatedly accused militants of using training camps in Afghanistan to launch attacks inside the territory, a claim Kabul denies, asserting that the insurgency stems from Pakistan's internal issues. Moving on. A prominent Uyghur rights activist has exposed China's ongoing repression of Uyghur community. He described mass detentions, forced labor, and advanced surveillance as part of a continuing genocide and urged the global community to act immediately. We have a report.
Former World Uyghur Congress President Dolkun has raised alarm over China's ongoing repression of Uyghurs and the worsening human rights crisis in Xinjiang region, also known as East Turkestan. The activist, who is in Geneva for the 59th UNHRC session, urged the UN to act. He said the region has become a symbol of serious rights abuses, including forced sterilization, family separation, and mass surveillance. He called on the global community to reject China's narrative, stand with Uyghur victims, and hold Beijing accountable.
Well, situation of the Uyghur in East Turkestan still dire. Still is million people are suffering in the concentration camps. Still is the forced labor is the issue, Uyghur forced labor. And there still is a million of Uyghur children, 1 million Uyghur children separate from family, forced labor and the forced separation. Still is the case in East Turkestan, but if you compare last couple of years, Chinese government now is organize a propaganda tour, brings some journalists, particularly from the global source, and even some Western country, invites them and they to just show them they use this delegation of the propaganda tool, then trying to whitewash on the ongoing genocide in East Turkestan for the Uyghurs.
People in Chinese internment camps have alleged being subjected to forced political indoctrination and torture, and say they have been prohibited from practicing their religion or speaking their language. However, China regularly denies such mistreatment and says the camps provide vocational training.
If it's not international pressure, not international media attention, not government pressure, not UN attention, no other people, civil society, and the ordinary people attention for this, then Chinese government can achieve its purpose. Because Chinese government trying to whitewashing this and trying to hiding this reality, and step by step, this Uyghur issue, Uyghur genocide is pushed to sideline, and slowly is forgetting it. This is the main purpose of the China. So that's why we strongly ask the international media, civil society, government should have implemented its role.
And after meeting Rory Mungovan, the Asia-Pacific chief of the UN Human Rights Office, a group of insurgency victims in Nepal wrote to UN High Commissioner Volker Turk, urging him to withhold support for Nepal's transitional justice commissions and back their demand for the resignation of newly appointed commissioners, the Kathmandu Post reported. The victims accused Mungovan of trying to persuade some victims to engage with what they call flawed commissions. Mungovan, however, said the UN is here for consultations and supports a victim-centered approach that meets international standards, the Kathmandu Post reported. Suman Adhikari, founding chair of the Conflict Victims Common Platform, claimed Mungovan met them after assuring support to the government and commissions. The amendment built on the Investigation of Enforced Disappeared Persons, Truth and Reconciliation Commission Act, which was passed by the National Assembly last year, aimed to ensure truth and accountability for serious human rights violations committed by all parties during Nepal's civil war. The law was one of the major demands in the Himalayan nation to help advance justice, accountability and readdress for the widespread human rights violations and abuses committed during the 1996 to 2006 conflict, in which at least 13,000 people were killed and 1,300 went missing. Moving on. Starlink, the satellite internet service owned by Elon Musk, went live in Sri Lanka, months after the internet service provider's entry was delayed over the data interception. The development was shared by Musk on social media platform X, which is also owned by him. With this, Sri Lanka has become the third nation in South Asia after Bhutan and Bangladesh to allow the satellite-based internet service. Colombo had delayed the entry as it raised concerns over legal interception rights for for Sri Lanka's security apparatus. The Lankan government has said security agencies should have access to relevant data for legal action in case the satellite communication services are misused for unlawful activities. Starlink is now gearing up for entry in India, where it has tied up with Jio and Airtel and is awaiting regulatory and licensing approvals from the space regulator. It is also seeking such approvals in Nepal, Myanmar, and Pakistan. And that's all in tonight's edition. We will see you same time tomorrow. Till then, good night.